All right, so recently I went to the movie theaters and I watched Deadpool versus Wolverine, and it was so good. So good. Best movie Marvel has produced in quite some time. But when it was over, I found myself wanting more Deadpool. Surprise, surprise. I then proceeded to watch, and there is no correlation, I proceeded to watch the Netflix adaptation of The Punisher, which ran for 2 seasons, and I finished the second season earlier today. But I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who said that he really enjoyed Deadpool and Wolverine, and I was like, I think it'd be really cool to watch Deadpool fight the Punisher. And he was like, no, that would be really boring. I don't really think that would make any sense, yada, yada, yada. And the conversation was over. That was just about the extent of it. But then I was scrolling through YouTube and I came across a short talking about a comic in which Deadpool fought the Punisher. So I did some research on my own as this tickled my fancy. And I actually found the comic and I just wanted to make a little video talking about it and reading through it and all that kind of stuff because holy crap. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Without further ado, I present to you Deadpool versus the Punisher. We open up with an inner monologue in which Frank says, "This may be a little hard to believe, but sometimes I actually feel sorry for them." We then see Frank seemingly working as a bouncer, but we know this is most likely nothing more than a cover for an operation. We then find out that the club they're in is a club where people place bets on how fights against heroes will go. As we see Iron Man, the Hulk, Black Widow, and whoever this guy is. Then this guy, who seems like a prick in all honesty, walks into the room. He tells Frank not to hide the weapons in his ass. Kinda weird. Moving on. The guy becomes even more of a prick as we find his name to be Radovan Jankovic. I don't really know how to say that, aka DJ Rad Jams. The DJ asks Frank's name as he's the new guy, and in the most Punisher way possible, Frank responds with shooting up the entire damn club, giving us the title card for the first issue. As the casings fall to the ground, Frank thanks the criminals for their guns as he mercies the last few that are alive. DJ Rad seems to cry in some other language as Frank appears behind him and slides a gun into his mouth. DJ tries to say something but can't due to the barrel in his mouth. So Frank responds with, "I don't understand you. Try writing it down." DJ scribbles onto the pad, "I can give you the bank." We then switch over to Deadpool, who seems to be going through selfies he's taken while fighting a group of narcos by the name of Narcoritos, led by Dawn of the Dead. As this man, who we would later find out is named The Bank, tries to thank Wade, he replies with, "No thanks needed, just your booze and money." As just then, a kid comes running in the room with a Deadpool mask and 2 toy guns, exclaiming that he's Uncle Wade. He then shoots Deadpool, and Deadpool playfully responds with, "Kid bullets are the only thing he can't regenerate from. What are the odds?" We find out here that Deadpool seems to have been with the bank for a while as he's watched the kid grow up. We swap back to Frank's POV as it seems he's infiltrated the security team and is undercover as one of the guards. We then find out from Frank that the bank is laundering money, and he also lends money to criminal organizations on 5 different continents. We also see that he's the owner of the Versus Club from earlier in the issue. Frank slips away as the bank's wife kisses Deadpool on the cheek. We then find out that Frank's plan is to allow the bank to lead him to the criminal groups so that he can kill all of them and then come after the bank after the fact. As he's looking for something on the computer, the kid from earlier spots him. Just then, a woman comes in and retrieves the kid, and upon seeing Frank, she says that Frank is in a restricted area. As Frank pulls his weapon, a small fight ensues, and the woman kicks Frank's gun out of his hand. As they're fighting, Frank deduces that the woman is most likely an ex-Israeli Special Forces agent, and that relatively speaking, she's a good fighter. He then slams her head into the desk, ending the scuffle. Someone exclaims that the Punisher is in the house, and as shots ring out in the distance, Deadpool's immediate thought is, if Frank wants dip for his chips, I guess. Bank then yells at Deadpool, pleading for help, and after a little bit of back and forth, Deadpool finally decides to engage Frank. The bank's wife grabs their kid and starts to leave, and one of the coolest lines I've ever heard, she says, "The only way to keep safe from a guy like Frank is to make sure he doesn't know a guy like you exists." And I just thought this was really cool because, I mean, after watching the TV show, there is no escaping Frank Castle. There's no way to get away from the Punisher once you're on his list. Just then, Deadpool jumps through a window, firing shots at Frank. Are you there, Punisher? It's me, Margaret, he exclaims as he lands a shot on Frank's forehead and shoulder. Maria runs off with the child, saying she doesn't want their son to be a part of this world. As Frank jumps behind cover, Wade kicks up a table and stands behind it, continuing to fire at Frank. Wade yells that he's protecting the bank not only because of the many messed up things that he's put him through, but also because he does his taxes for him. And then says that Frank probably doesn't do his taxes, so should he be punished for tax evasion? He then brings up a very funny callback to another comic that I learned about while researching for this one, in which Frank is brought back from the dead by Morbius and is named Frankencastle. Wade then lands a shot into Frank's forearm, causing him to drop his gun, and Wade asks Frank for a reason to not turn him over to the bank's men. But as they're having their little conversation, Maria turns on the engine to the boat and it explodes, killing her and the kid. An undisclosed amount of time later, we arrive at Frank's safe house, and we find out through Frank's monologue that Frank performed a small surgery on himself in the back seat of the car that kept him alive, although he's lost a lot of blood and was in and out of consciousness the whole drive. As he opens the door to his safe house, he realizes everything's been stolen, and Wade steps out saying that he in fact was the one that robbed Frank. He says that he found Frank's safe house because of the amount and type of ammo that Frank buys. When asked how he got past the defenses, Deadpool responds by saying he simply activated them all. Wade thanks his healing factor and says that at this current moment in time, Frank appears like he could use a healing factor as well. Frank says he wouldn't want it because it would make him sloppy, as he would essentially have no consequences to making mistakes. We then find out that Wade believes Frank placed the explosives on the boat and that he was the reason that the kid and Maria died. And Frank says that he didn't plant them and that someone is setting him up. And Wade just assumes Frank to be lying and asks if Frank has any last words. In the blink of an eye, Frank pulls out a gun and shoots Wade in the forehead and says, "Told you, sloppy." And just like that, issue 1 of Deadpool vs. the Punisher ends with the Punisher being the victor of round 1. So that's the end of the first issue, and I am absolutely adoring this story. I'm going to instantly start working on the second part of this video, so leave a like if you enjoyed and stick around for the next one. I love you all, and have a great night.